Hi, I'm William Thayer. I'm talking about the EuroCrisis. This video segment is what I call the Max Weber solution. It's the fifth of the 5 video segments that I prepared on the EuroCrisis. Who was Max Weber? We've kind of forgotten. Everybody's talking about Keynes or Friedman in the economic world. Well, Max Weber, about the year 1900, wrote The Protestant Work Ethic. And what he said essentially is that hard work, saving money, not spending every last penny, saving money and investing in the future was the key to economic success. This is the opposite of what the Eurozone's doing, okay? They're not working hard. They're spending every penny and they're borrowing more. This is a recipe for economic failure. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about and that will show vividly what more work can mean. In the United States, during World War II, the GDP was doubled in just 4 years. It's absolutely amazing. Why? Because people worked more. Of course, it was war, 1941 to 45, and it wasn't hard to motivate people to work 60 hours a week, but you were working 40 hours a week, now you worked 50% more, 60 hours a week. The result was the GDP of the country doubled. Now, there's an issue of working more, but there's also a thing of, well, what do you work on? Well, during World War II, that was pretty simple. Okay, the marketing was supplied by the military. 300,000 airplanes, 100 aircraft carriers, 100,000 tanks. Whatever the military wanted, that was what you worked on. But what was remarkable about the U.S. experience was, during the post-war period, 1945 to 50, it took that tremendous military thing and converted it into civilian goods. Millions of houses were built, millions of cars were built, millions of refrigerators were made. So they did the successful marketing transition. The U.S. is not the only example, but it's probably the best example of what more work did. So what I'm talking about here, what I'm describing as the Max Weber solution for Europe is this. First of all, you got to work more, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more with Europe. Secondly, you got to work on the right stuff. So that's marketing. And you know, what's the right answer for marketing this year? Maybe the wrong answer next year. I mean, let's take Kodak, for example. They did the same old thing year after year after year. For 100 years, it was pretty effective policy. They made film. Then along came the digital age and digital photography. Guess what? Kodak is going bankrupt. Okay, so the answer constantly changes with marketing. You got to find a need and you got to fill it. And finally, you got to innovate. This world is not standing still. If you stand still, you're in trouble, okay? And I'll illustrate that with Greece. Can the Eurozone work more? Absolutely. The Eurozone has, from the day you first start working, you get 6 weeks of vacation a year. This compares to Americans that get 2 weeks a year, unless you're self-employed, which you're probably getting less vacation than that. But if the Europeans cut their vacation from 6 weeks down to 2 weeks, they would effectively be working 50 weeks a year instead of 46 weeks. Well, it's simple math. Take 50, divide it by 46, you get 1.087. That's really 8% potential growth that the Europeans could be adding to their economy every year. Of course, you got to do the marketing that goes along with it. Now, let's talk about France. 35-hour work week, that's enshrined in France, okay? If they went back to a 40-hour work week, again, do the math. 35 divided by 40, 1.14. In other words, they could potentially grow their economy 14% more. So can Europeans work more? You bet. You got to do the marketing. You got to be working on the right stuff. But the basic bottom line is this for Europe. They're working, on the average, 1,500 hours a year. U.S. people, U.S. citizens are working 2,000 hours a year. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what the problem is. The Europeans aren't working enough. For the last 10 years, they've been coasting on momentum. Well, the momentum has run out. If you want to get back to being a prosperous Europe, you, Europeans, have got to work more. In this EuroCrisis, I read the European media, I read the European computer websites for their newspapers and stuff like that. They're talking about Keynesian economics or Friedman economics or raising taxes or lowering taxes or, you know, infrastructure or something like that. What they're not a single European economist, not a single European leader is saying is, hey, if we want prosperity, we Europeans have got to work more. And that's the simple, straight answer. Now, innovating more. I want to talk about innovating because we're in a world that's rapidly changing. I mean, look what happened to Kodak. They were great for 100 years producing film, and then along came the digital world and they got wiped out. Let me illustrate this with Apple Computer. Apple Computer is a very innovative company. They've got about 30,000 people. Last year, I think their gross revenues were $100 billion. Well, in the last quarter here that they just announced, it was $46 billion. So maybe this number will have to be updated to 150 or 200 billion. But let's compare them to Greece. Greece, 11 million people, $300 billion. 3 times what Apple Computer is making. This is disgraceful. Why? What is the problem? Well, back in the days of the Trojan War, the Greeks were big in olives and shipping. And in the 21st century, they're big in olives and shipping. They're not innovating. Now, what the Greeks have got to do, and it's not going to be able to be accomplished overnight, they got to get back to the days of Archimedes and Euclid and Pythagoras and Plato and Aristotle. They've got to do the innovative thinking that they're capable of, but they're not doing. Let me now try to summarize my 5 videos just with 3 basic points. In this video series, the first thing I want to do is say what the European Central Bank is not doing. And what I'm saying is the Eurozone is on an unsupportable bailout policy. It is absolutely, positively not going to work. And if they continue blindly down this path, they're going into depression. This would be a disaster for Western civilization. It'd be a disaster for the people of Europe. That's why I'm making these videotapes. That's why I wrote my book. The second thing is I have identified high-frequency trading, short selling, and derivatives as major financial flaws in our system. Now, naturally, I'd like to correct those flaws, but there's not going to be enough time for Europe. So what I'm suggesting to Europe is they suspend these activities. Already they're doing it in short selling, but they've got to suspend the activity in all these areas. Otherwise, when the stock market crashes, it's going to be really, really bad. Finally, optimistically, but maybe not pleasantly for the people that are kind of lazy there in Europe, optimistically, Europe can return to greatness, but it's going to require more work, more marketing, and more innovation. What I'm saying is this. Europe's got to get itself out of this welfare mentality where everything flows from the state. I'm born, therefore I get health care, therefore I get unemployment insurance, therefore I'm taken care of from the cradle to the grave. You got to get back to the Europe that was innovative. You got to get back to the Europe that brought the world the first and the second industrial revolutions. Europe has done great things in the past, but it's really fumbling the ball at the present. Thank you very much for your attention for these tapes. I wish Europe well. But I will say this, the fate of Europe is in the hands of Europe. If you do not pay attention to the things such as what I've mentioned in these videotapes, you're not going to have a pleasant future. Thank you.